This is Adam. He is building. Observe the fishes in the pond. Notice that the number of fishes gets less and less. This happens because after a period of time, the fishes die. All living things, including us, die after a period of time. However, the world does not get empty because, as some living things die, there are always others being born. All living things, humans, animals, and plants, reproduce. Reproduction is the biological process of producing offspring. Why is reproduction important? Discuss with your friends. Reproduction increases the population of living things on Earth. Without reproduction, the number of living things, including us humans, will be reduced and finally becomes extinct. You have learned that living things are interdependent. So, if a population becomes extinct, it will affect other populations. That is why reproduction is important to maintain the continuity of living things. Do you know how living things reproduce? Do all living things reproduce the same way? Click on each living thing to find out how they reproduce. There are two types of reproduction: sexual and asexual reproduction. Humans and most animals and plants reproduce sexually. However, there are some animals and plants that reproduce asexually. First, let us look at sexual reproduction. The process of sexual reproduction involves two parents of different gender. The parents contribute the male and female gametes or sex cells to the process. Sexual reproduction produces a new individual. Unlike sexual reproduction, the process of asexual reproduction needs only one parent to reproduce. There are several types of asexual reproduction. The types of asexual reproduction include budding, binary fission, regeneration, vegetative propagation, and spore formation. Click on each type to know more about its process. The process of budding involves a growth from the side of a parent cell. This growth will develop and grow to form a new bud. A wall will form between the parent and the bud, causing the bud to detach from the parent. The detached bud becomes a new individual. Binary fission happens when mature organisms that have reached maximum size perform cell division to produce two identical cells. The identical cells produced will develop and have the same characteristics as their parent. The identical cells are new individuals. Regeneration is the replacement or regrowth of missing or injured body parts. Starfish or sea stars are capable of regenerating. If a part of it is cut, and if that piece includes the central disc, this piece will grow into a new sea star. However, if you cut only the tip of the arm without the central disc, the tip will not regenerate, but the injured sea star will grow another arm. Through the process of vegetative propagation, new plants are produced from the existing plant organs or parts of organs. The new plants have the same characteristics as the original plant. The process of spore formation involves the spores which can develop to form new individuals. The spores are produced and stored in the sporangium. When the spores mature, the sporangium will burst and release the spores. The released spores will germinate to form new individuals. Do you know that you can help reproduce a plant asexually? You need a hibiscus plant, a cutter, and a pot of moist soil. All living things need to reproduce. Budding, binary fission, regeneration, vegetative propagation, and spore formation. You already know about sexual reproduction. The process of sexual reproduction actually needs a new individual. The male gamete is called the sperm, and the female gamete is called the ovum or egg. When the sperm and the ovum are fused together, fertilization occurs. After fertilization, a zygote is formed. Sexual reproduction begins with fertilization. Fertilization is a process where the male and female gametes are fused together. Fertilization only happens during sexual reproduction and does not happen during asexual reproduction. There are two types of fertilization. You have just seen the type of fertilization that occurs in humans. Let's see an example of another type of fertilization. Look at the frogs. The female frog is laying eggs. At the same time, the male frog is releasing sperms. The sperms will swim towards the eggs to fertilize them. The fertilized eggs will later develop into tadpoles. What is the difference between the fertilization that occurs in humans and the fertilization that occurs with the frogs? Do you know in humans, fertilization occurs inside the female's body? For the frogs, fertilization occurs outside the female's body. There are two types of fertilization. Fertilization that takes external fertilization. Let's play a game. Your aim is to fertilize the egg. What is the meaning of fertilization? Called needs are Fertilization is a process where the male and female gametes are fused together. Fertilization only happens during sexual reproduction. Fertilization that takes place inside the female's body is called internal fertilization. Fertilization that takes place outside the female's body is called external fertilization. You have learned that there are two types of reproduction, sexual and asexual reproduction. Both result in the production of new individuals. Look at the fish and the paramecium. Which reproduces sexually and which reproduces individuals? Even though they look similar to their parents, each one is actually different from the other. This is known as variation. The paramecium reproduces asexually. In asexual reproduction, there is only one parent. It does not involve the fusion of male and female gametes. Therefore, fertilization does not occur. The parent divides by itself. As a result, a new individual is produced. Look at the new individuals. Each one looks exactly the same as its parent. What are the similarities and differences between sexual and asexual reproduction? Key in your answers into the correct places. Click on the labels for hints. What is the purpose of reproduction? What are the similarities between sexual and asexual? Identical to its parent, are similar to their parents, and asexual. The reproduction requires individuals of different sexes. During fertilization, the male and female gametes fuse together to produce new individuals. The new individuals are similar to their parents. However, there are differences between each individual because of variation. In asexual reproduction, there is only one parent. There are no gametes and fertilization does not occur. A new individual is produced through cell division. Each individual is identical to its parent. All living organisms on Earth reproduce to maintain its population. Look at the pictures. Do you know if these organisms reproduce sexually or asexually? Strawberry plant. Organisms that can reproduce both sexually and asexually. For example, jellyfish, leech, algae, and strawberry plant. You know that animals and plants reproduce sexually. These are microorganisms viewed under a microscope. The asexual. Plants and animals reproduce sexually or asexually. Flowering plants can reproduce sexually and asexually through vegetative propagation. Non-flowering plants reproduce asexually through spore formation, vegetative propagation, and budding. The ways which animals can reproduce asexually are binary fission, regeneration, and budding. Which of the following ways can plants answer? Click on one of the questions to see the answer. Why do we need to reproduce? Reproduction is the process of producing offspring. All living things reproduce. Reproduction is important to increase the population of living things and to maintain the continuity of living things. There are two types of reproduction, sexual and asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction involves two parents of different gender. Asexual reproduction involves only one parent. There are 5 types of asexual reproduction: budding, binary fission, regeneration, vegetative propagation, and spore formation. Fertilization occurs when the male gamete and the female gamete are fused together. Internal fertilization is fertilization that takes place inside the female's body. External fertilization is fertilization that takes place outside the female's body. The result of both sexual and asexual reproduction is a new individual. Sexual reproduction requires 2 parents. However, for asexual reproduction, it only requires a single parent. In sexual reproduction, the male and female gametes fuse together during fertilization to produce a new individual. In asexual reproduction, the cell divides and becomes a new individual. Variation occurs in sexual reproduction, whereas each individual is an exact duplicate of its parent in asexual reproduction. Reproduction in plants and animals can be classified as sexual or asexual. Sexual reproduction in plants occurs only in flowering plants. Asexual reproduction in plants is classified under 3 types: spore formation, vegetative propagation, and budding. Asexual reproduction in animals is classified under these types: binary fission, budding, and regeneration. The result of both reproduction in plants and animals can be classified as sexual formation and generation. Asexual reproduction involves only one parent. It works well, simpler and faster. Yet some living things, including humans, reproduce sexually, where they need to find a partner to produce an offspring. What are the advantages of sexual reproduction? Discuss with your friends. This picture shows a clone of an orchid plant. Find out, together with your friends, how to clone a plant. See if you and your friends can clone an orchid plant.